All right, welcome again. I am back again for another video. So, recently, as I'm navigating in the web and with all the current world events going on, especially with the conflict going on in the Middle East, the war between Israel and the Palestinians, or more specifically, the war between the state of Israel and the organization calling themselves Hamas, because Hamas is not a country. Hamas are not freedom fighters. Hamas do not represent the mainstream of the Palestinian society. Hamas is more like a subgroup of this international organization known by the name of the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay, so Muslim Brotherhood, for anybody who doesn't know who these people are, they are basically this transnational organization that have started in Egypt. It's been founded by a guy named Hassan al-Banna. He was a native Egyptian who was born and raised during the British colonial of Egypt, and he kind of like saw the inequality between the colonials and his people, and he wanted to do something about it. Unfortunately, what happened is that his concept, his model, was quite unpragmatic. It was basically more like a fantasy written on a paper, kind of shit you read on a paper and you kind of like get captivated by the concept, by the artistic part of it. But once you apply it in the real world, it's nothing but a catastrophe. It's very similar to what's going on with communism. Like you read the Communist Manifesto, and kind of like share with you a certain diagnosis about the issue of the current system. But when it comes to prescriptions, when it comes to the solution, when it comes to some kind of equivalent alternative, it flaps, it collapses. It's not as accurate, as practical as it seems in the paper. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, and even among the people who are living in the Middle East or North Africa or any other Muslim country, most people are not very familiar with this organization and they don't understand how ingrained their ideology is within their subconscious mind. Because these people have worked in a very insidious way to inject and push their delusional agenda, which created so many issues for all the Muslim societies across the globe. So back to the subject, like basically what I'm saying is that I am looking at the world event going on as I'm navigating in the web. I'm watching a lot of content, especially on YouTube, as the YouTube algorithm keeps on suggesting more and more content, more and more videos. And the more I'm looking at this situation, especially with the most recent event, like the way how the one of the Hamas group decided to trespass the Israeli territory and basically just go and pillage some local villages by slaughtering as many people as they can, by killing as many innocent civilians as they could, and then abducting some more. The more I'm looking at these people, and the more I realize how dangerous this Hamas group actually is. Because to a lot of people, especially people in Palestine, a lot of them consider them as sort of freedom fighters. They think that those people have the intention of freeing the country. The part they don't understand is that once they, let's hypothetically say, they arrive to free the country, the next thing they're going to do is that they're going to take over the power and they are going to establish a theocracy similar to the one in Iran. And we all know about the situation in Iran when it comes to freedom of speech, when it comes to the level of corruption, when it comes to all the war crimes that state has been committing, and the real threat to freedom that country is becoming. on an international level. So the reason why I'm picking this particular subject is because although I never mentioned that before, but I was born and raised in a Muslim country, a country I am not going to mention simply because I don't want to give that particular country any credit for anything I have accomplished so far, because my experience back then, my early first 20 years of my life I spent there, was nothing but a complete chaos. It was like it was completely confusing, and to these days, and it's been quite a while since I left my country, I am still paying the debt of all the years I've wasted, of all the years I have been robbed of, just for the crime of being born in the wrong part of this world. Because that's pretty much what it is. See, when you're born and raised in those countries and you are one of the rare exceptions who managed to make it to the first world country, and not only you manage to make it to the first world country, but you also take the time to learn the language, to internalize the culture, and to develop a view about what is actually going on in a more objective way. You look at that situation in your homeland, and you look at all the conflicts going on in the world, and it becomes very easy for you to see who's telling the truth, who's lying, who's gaslighting, who's taking things seriously, who cannot be taken seriously. And just based on my own perspective, okay? And I've been in this world for quite a while. And I'll tell you one thing. I'm not just gonna say my country. I'm not just gonna say my civilization, aka the Muslim civilization or the Islamic civilization, but everything beside the Western first world developed countries, especially the Eastern countries or the Eastern civilizations, the Islamic one, the Russian one, or the Orthodox civilization, and also the Chinese, the Sinic civilizations. These people, not only they are full of shit, but they are fucking dangerous. They are a real menace to our species as human beings. So I came to the US in 2010, in January of 2010, and it didn't take me a lot of time before I start building an idea about what is actually going on, because by moving from one civilization to another and having an opportunity to listen to both sides of the story, you kind of like start building a more three-dimensional perspective about what is going on, especially if you are the curious type of person like the one I am. If you are open to experience, if you are predisposed with this personality trait, psychologists call it openness to experience, which is one of the 5 personality traits of this clinical psychological model known by the Big Fives, also known by the acronym of OCEAN. People who are high in this personality trait are very curious. They like to stay in the fringe of society. They like to experience new things. We kind of like get bored very easy, so we don't like to stay too much in the mainstream, in the course of society. We are always kind of a little bit slightly ahead of the curve because we are always curious about the new thing. And I think this personality trait kind of helped me in terms of figuring things out quite fast. And like I'm saying, as I was building the picture, collecting pieces of the puzzle, and understanding what's going on by looking at different subjects, reading a lot of books that cover different aspects, different areas of our world, our human nature, our history. The more I am looking at it, and the more I'm kind of like subconsciously tearing down that current narrative or that pre-existing narrative I was being conditioned to subscribe to. And by tearing down the pre-existing narrative, I kind of also reconstruct a new one as a way to alternate that ideological vacuum. And here I am right now, completely free on an ideological level. I don't think there's anything now that could change my mind about my worldviews, because I believe that I did take all the necessary time to establish a grounded foundation and build a quite solid narrative about reality and how things work overall. So, like I'm saying, it got to the point as I'm looking at the world, I'm questioning everything from religion to science, philosophy, politics, psychology. It just got to the point where I had to make this very solid decision of dropping religion. See, for someone who was born and raised in the Western world, like dropping religion is not a big deal. It doesn't take that much because religion is not even part of your world. Not as much as it is if you were born in a completely different part of the world, especially in the Islamic civilization. So, like dropping religion requires a lot of courage. It requires it's more than just courage. It's almost like a sort of reckless behavior. It's basically being a daredevil. That's pretty much what you are, because you kind of like almost going toe to toe with God, challenging God by rejecting those scriptures, by rejecting the religious model. Although deep inside, you're not really walking away from God, you are more like building a more grounded foundation for yourself, which actually leads you even closer to God. But not the God the religious scholars, I don't even want to call them scholars, I mean the religious current pseudo scholars want you to subscribe to. The more I'm looking at the current situation in the Islamic world, and the more I realize how my people are going through a serious dark age. Because you look at the Middle East, you see what? You see nothing but conflict. You see nothing but bloodshed. You see nothing but war after war after war after war. And people are confused. People don't understand what is going on. Some people think it's because of oil. Some people think it's because of Israel. Some people think it's because of the American foreign policy. But to some few people, the elephant is actually in the room. And the elephant is radical Islam. And when I say radical Islam, I'm not just talking about some extreme factions like Hamas or ISIS. I am talking about even the current mainstream Islam. Because to me, Islam as a political system, as a theocracy, maybe there was time when Islam was at its prime. Maybe there was time when Islam was a way to subjugate all those tribes that were killing each other on a regular basis and bring them all together beneath one single banner to form this more cohesive, peaceful society in the entire region. But again, like I've mentioned in previous videos, I believe that everything has a lifespan. I believe that everything goes through those 4 seasons. And I believe that everything you see right now is nothing but a complete dark age. Yeah, there was time when Islam came off the underground and overthrew the status quo and reached its golden age, and it achieved that glorious, prosperous empire. But the Islamic civilization best days are way behind, and things have been crumbling for centuries now. Things have been getting worse and worse, and all what you see right now is nothing but pure dark age of Islam, and I don't see any kind of resurrection of such system. What I do see, however, is probably a renaissance, like similar scenario to what happened with the Western civilization, when people got so fed up by the corruption of the Catholic Church, and those smart intellectuals realized that the only way to get rid of this situation is by taking the power from those theocratic Catholics and basically splitting the church from the government, from politics, and allowing for the rise of the nation state model as an alternative. There was time in some of the Islamic countries where people were following a similar scenario. There was time when people were working on establishing a theocratic, not theocratic, my bad, I mean like a rational democratic state. And things seem to be working pretty well up until the far right parties have managed to counter that movement and basically drag those societies back to the old age. So basically, what you see now, like the Islamic world, all stuck in some pre-modern system that is not based on democratic values. All the Islamic civilization, all the countries you see now, nothing but a failure of the establishment of those countries. Because you look at all those states, like we're talking about like Middle Eastern countries like Palestine, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran. Only you talking about something like North Africa, like Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, or you look at something like in Asia, like Pakistan, Afghanistan, Turkey. You look at all those states. You need to understand that there was no such thing before the First World War. all what was there was a huge empire called the Ottoman Empire, which was basically like the fourth and last empire of this quote unquote great Islamic civilization. So after the war and the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, so the British Empire had to figure out a way to regulate that part of the world by establishing this new model of the rational institution of democratic countries, where people from different ethnicities could just come and live beneath one single banner, sharing all the democratic values. So what ended up happening is that the entire Ottoman Empire has been balkanized and fragmented to smaller states, which are basically the current Arab Islamic countries you see in the map. So essentially, before the British Empire intervened, there was no such thing as Palestine. Like, it was just like regular native people, local people who shared the land. It was until after the Second World War and all the catastrophe that happened to the Jewish community in Europe, and how some of those smart Jewish people decided to establish their own Jewish state, that the nation of Palestine became a reality, because there was no such thing as Palestine or Israel. There was just some kind of it was basically wilderness. There's nothing out there, because the world that 100 years ago, it wasn't as developed, as civilized as it is right now. It was a complete Wild West. So all this talk about how the Palestinians have been invaded and colonized by the Israelis, to me, when I look at this situation, I'm trying to look at it in a way much more objective way. Like, there was no such thing as Israel. Yeah, that's true, but the reality is that there was no such thing as Palestine either. So to me, back to this issue with Hamas and the conflict in Palestine, we gotta all understand that the real reason why the state of Israel has been so demonized, has been so smeared by the Muslims, is because it's not because of some kind of political conflict, but it has all to do with a religious belief. It has all to do with those scriptures. It has all to do with those narratives. There's dangerous there. There's an anti-Semitist narrative that is very popular among the Islamic society, and unfortunately, it seems like people like those radical factions seems like they want to ride those waves. They want to take over the power in the region. And the way how they do it is by basically, like I'm saying, first they got like smear Israel, and they also like scapegoat Jews about everything going wrong within their societies. Like people like living like way far from Israel, like somewhere out there in North Africa, okay? And you see them calling for the liberation. Like motherfucker lives in France, Algerian or Moroccan living in France, and calling for the liberation of Palestine. Just shows you how powerful the propaganda of the Muslim Brotherhood is. Because the more you look at the situation and you look at how Muslim Brotherhood are using Israel state as a scapegoat to basically not looking at themselves in the mirror and not questioning anything about that dangerous narrative they've been subscribing to, the more you realize how complicated the conflict is, because I don't see there's any way for this conflict to stop until the Muslim Brotherhood narrative is getting debunked, is getting challenged, is getting exposed, so that the average Palestinian or the average Muslim all over the world need to understand that they have been living a lie, that they have been subscribing to the wrong narrative. And I think that's the other, it's like a double whammy basically, because what you see there is that on one hand you have this radical extremist dangerous groups who are using the current political situation in a region to exploit the people of Palestine or the Muslim overall. But there's also another element, because although the situation may seem like the conflict may seem like it's just an intellectual issue, there's also the element of emotions, because the average idiot is neither intellectually nor emotionally prepared to go through that shift of mind and dropping the pre-existing narrative in order to subscribe to something healthier, to something more sustainable. So the more I was thinking about the situation, and like I'm saying, like because my situation is quite different, it's quite special, like having the privilege of moving all the way to first world country and learning the language, and also being almost like biologically predisposed with certain personality traits that allow me to walk into those uncharted zone, into those blurry areas and explore the unknown. The more I'm looking at this situation, and the more I realize that the only way for me to make it out of this mess is by basically dropping religion and just walking away. And that's pretty much what I've done. I made this very serious decision of dropping my religion. And not only I dropped my religion, by I also decided to slowly cutting off most of my people, because it seems like most people are kind of like stuck in certain level of consciousness because of the narrative. The more I'm looking at the situation, the more I realize that I had to cut my people off in order to allow for myself to reach my full potential. I had to liberate myself ideologically, but I had also to liberate myself culturally by evacuating from that environment and allowing myself to experience new. And even to these days, I don't think I have regretted my decision. I think it's pretty much like one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, to be honest. So if you have this intention of going into the comment section and leaving me some comment begging me to getting back to the line, or may Allah guide me back to Islam, I just want to let you know that that is not gonna happen. To me, religion is nothing but some old story. That's it. I'm done with that, and there is no turning back from it, because like I'm saying, I took all the time to build a picture and understand what was actually going on before making this highly difficult decision. And now it was difficult. The reason why it was difficult is because it was a permanent decision, a decision that would change the courses of my life forever. So that's pretty much what it is. Modern day and age, Islam is nothing but some retail level religion. It's a dead religion. It's a religion that is being taking a nap in its grave for centuries by now. And all what you see now is just like the remaining of this dead civilization.